Okay, let's go to Greg here. And Greg says, Lee and John, as a smaller market fan in Seattle, it is discouraging to see the two highest payrolls in the World Series. I find myself rooting for the Mets and Cleveland World Series. How do smaller markets compete?
It's hard. You got to, you need a stroke of good luck. You need a good farm system to make it work. Can it happen? Sure, it's happened in the past. I mean, look, Arizona was in the World Series a year ago today. Seattle, what would they be like if they had kept Teoscar Hernandez instead of having him wear Dodger blue? Maybe that would have been the difference maker. I mean, Seattle, I'm not going to say they wasted a year of great pitching. I think they had the number one overall ERA of starting pitchers in baseball.
Yeah.
And yet it was a scuffle for them to try to get and stay in the playoff race, and eventually they did not. You need to be able to draft. You need to be able to sign internationals. You need a little lady luck that your guys are not going to break down. The Mariners could not hit a lick up until the end of the season, and by then it was just kind of late. They lost the whole thing. They were up by, I don't know, 10 games over Houston, and then Houston wound up winning the division, and then Houston got taken out. So Seattle's close. Maybe it's just a growth thing. Maybe they just got to keep the Julio Rodriguez's and some of those other guys healthy along the way. I mean, no doubt they got really, really good young pitching.
Having a big budget obviously helps, but it's certainly no guarantee. Although this year, all the big money teams made the playoffs. Yep. It's funny. Seattle is such an interesting sports town because I don't think they've ever won a big championship, have they?
No.
Not in football, not in baseball, not with the Supersonics back in the day. So, and then the Kraken, I mean, they've been competitive, but they haven't won the NHL.
No, but they've only been in operation, 3 years?
3 years. So yeah. Seattle, it used to be Cleveland was the most, depressed sports market. Seattle and San Diego might be the two running for it.
Well, Seattle's got University of Washington, and they've had really good football in different chunks of time. I think the Pacific Northwest, notably Seattle and the state of Washington, is just a great sports venue.
Well, you were the play-by-play man for the Seahawks. I mean, tell me about your experience doing that job.
It was great. I went there after the Chargers left our station, and I wound up going to Seattle doing the Seahawks for 3 years and had a great time. And they were just in the process of transitioning from bad franchise with new ownership led by Paul Allen, who had bought the franchise. Ken Behring, I think, was the owner who tried to move it to Los Angeles. They were moving out of their offices, and it was a court order. You can't move to L.A., and they wound up staying, and Behring got rid of the franchise. Paul Allen bought it, and they had Dennis Erickson as head coach my first year, and then Mike Holmgren, who eventually got them to a Super Bowl. It's a great area. Between Seahawk fan at the old Kingdome and Washington fan at Husky Stadium, which is just a beautiful venue. And Mariner baseball, but that 1 year they won 116 games with each of those. And they got knocked out of the playoffs after 116-win season. Think about that.
Was that the year that they knocked out the Yankees in the first round?
Could be.
But that was when they had Griffey and Johnson and
Jay Buhner. And I mean, that was a real collection of players.
Yeah, it really. And A-Rod was on that team too. But when you were broadcasting the Seahawks, were you in the Kingdome?
Oh yeah, strangest place.
It is a weird place.
I mean, it was like a big airport hangar. And the noise would ricochet off the cement walls. There wasn't any sounding boards in there. It was a tough place to play. When the Seahawks were good in the Chuck Knox era, damn, that was a tough place to play.
I saw a Seattle Mariners game there against the Red Sox, and it was weird. It was echoing. It was like maybe only a third full, and it was the old-fashioned artificial turf that's like, 1/8 of an inch on top of a concrete pad.
Yep.
I wasn't feeling it, but I'm happy that Seattle has two new stadiums.
Yeah, well, the baseball stadium's cool. Obviously, the new field, which was built on the site of the old Kingdome, that's a cool venue. And I'll tell you, that thing is the seats. What's it called now? Lumen Stadium, Lumen Field.
I think so.
The corporate sponsor. The seats go up. I mean, you are right on top of the field, and there's cantilevered. It's not an enclosed. It's a roof. And that sound stays in that stadium. It does not go up and out.
Well, that's kind of like the Husky Stadium is built that way too, isn't it?
Yeah, but Husky's a little bit more open though.
Okay.
But great venues. I think the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, state of Washington is just great sports town. Next one.
Okay, let's go to Johnny. He says, hey, how about that Dodger pitching staff?
Boy, I'm getting banged. I did the commentary and I wrote a huge column, about a month and a half ago, about the Dodger way doesn't work. talking about the pitching crisis, the epicenter of all the injuries. And at that point, the Dodgers were staggering and all their pitchers were having surgery. And, and then the LA Times, a week and a half after I wrote my column, they did this big investigative report, really put together well, about all the pitching injuries and the mishandling of the pitchers and what they demand of the pitchers. And I said the Dodger way no longer works. Now everybody, in the last 2.5 weeks, the whole world is piling on me for my column about Dodger way doesn't work. Well, they still have pitching problems. I mean, I can't imagine being in the World Series and having to have probably 2 bullpen days in a 7-game series. At the end of the day, the Dodgers, I'm not saying they're living on borrowed time because they've earned this trip to the World Series against the Yankees because of their bats and the grittiness of their bullpen, but they still got monster pitching problems that need to be addressed in the offseason. But the world is just piling on me for my column and my commentary here about the Dodger way.
Well, you were accurate in what you were saying at that time.
With all the injuries, all the surgeries.
Yeah, and then suddenly the Dodgers pitching just flipped and became like all aces. And you're like, what happened, to this whole situation? So Dodger fan, I think, acknowledged and said, essentially you were right that the whole system was breaking down. But now that the Dodgers are winning, they're like, I told you so. Hacksaw, you don't know what you're talking about now. So it's just like, they kind of, whenever the script flips, they just kind of move from bandwagon A to bandwagon B.
Yeah, and the bandwagoners either didn't approve that I was wearing a Dodger hoodie. I know Padre fan didn't approve, but it's in the closet. It's clean. I'm going to put it on.
It's funny. You get more comments almost about what you were wearing, than you were about the sports commentary.
We move on.
Okay, let's go down here to on the list.
John's got all these starred. We have a column on the right-hand side of our screen where John kind of previews them and puts stars. We've got so many stars here. We're going to be here till Wednesday.
A long time. Yeah, this is from Callan. Howdy, gents. Who do you got winning the Larry O'Brien this season?
Well, if Boston stays healthy, Boston returns all this firepower. Now, granted, there's a little bit more age on that Boston roster right now, but the Celtics, to me, just look tremendous. I'll be intrigued to see what the Knickerbockers become, by virtue of that last-second trade they made, where they got Julius Randle out the door and they got Karl Anthony Towns. How does he fit? Knickerbockers have a bit of a problem, I think, in the pivot, but I think the Knickerbockers are worth looking at. Dallas is Dallas, but I'd be really concerned about what appears to be an ongoing calf problem with Luka Doncic. He had calf problems at the end of last season, and he'd missed most of this preseason with calf issues, and now we're about to embark on an 80-game schedule. Is he going to hold up there? So NBA, I think it's a little bit wide open. Injuries are surely making things different in the NBA if you lose one of your stars. Going to be unique to see what Golden State's going to be like post-Klay Thompson. Thompson, of course, is now in Dallas and seems to have found the fountain of youth. Is it too much on Curry, or does Steve Kerr found enough young guys to put around Steph Curry and Draymond Green? Is this the last hurrah for those guys? So it's going to be, I like watching the NBA, but it's a long slog of a season.
Well, the West is still more loaded than the East, right? Yeah.
So you got Milwaukee. I mean, with Giannis, you got to pay respect to them, but they got age and they got injury, and Chris Middleton's not going to play to start the season again. He's hurt. So
yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of teams in the East that we haven't heard much about in a long time. By the way, Larry O'Brien, wasn't he like the commissioner?
Yes.
Like that was before
David Stern.
Larry
was there a long time when it became big business.
Okay.
And then David Stern took it to the next global level.
Well, Stern took over in the 80s?
Yeah.
So when Magic and Bird came on the scene, was Larry O'Brien still a commissioner? Or maybe it was Stern then?
Might have been Stern.
Yeah.
But, Larry O'Brien managed it through when it was small and it became big business. And then David Stern, that coincided with Yao Ming and all the great players came from abroad. Then it became global business. David Stern did a maximus job making the NBA a global financial entity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a remarkable man. Yeah. Let's keep moving. Let's go to Raul. Lee and John, what off-season moves do you see the Padres making?
Well, they got 7 guys that are due pay raises, Raul. And I talked about this on TV. I do Saturday sports at 6:30 in the morning. You need to get your ass out of bed early. If I'm up there at the station at 5:30 to be on at 6:30, you should at least watch. But I did a huge thing about the Padre payroll. I'll just give you a thumbnail sketch. Padre payroll right now is at 169. They got 7 guys that have to be taken care of. That includes pay raises for Dylan Cease and Michael King. It obviously includes what they're going to give Luis Arise, who they got from Miami. And a lot of people don't know or forgot, Miami paid his whole salary this year. So the Padres are now on the hook of everything for Luis Arise. So the big issue is, and they got to take care of the kid. Jackson Merrill's not going to play in a second-year rookie contract. He's going to get a pay bump from $800,000, which was the rookie minimum, to probably $6 to $8 million. So every one of these guys is arbitration eligible. Tanner Scott is a free agent, which means that's going to have a high price tag. You got to re-sign Profar. If they pay each of the 7 what's projected to be their earned income, Padre payroll will go from 169 to 234. That's not going to fly. Owners are not going to go back above the 200 mark. So that means somebody's leaving. Here's the argument. If you were the general manager, you got Luis Arise, single sitter, player without a position, doesn't run the bases real well, single sitter, virtually no power. You're going to pay him 14.8. That's what he's due. And again, they paid 0 last year because Miami picked up the contract. You got Cease, no hitter, cornerstone ace of the staff to a degree. But he's represented by
Scott Boras.
Price tag on him is probably going to go from 8 to maybe 14.
Wow.
You got Michael King, 2.5 last year. He's become Greg Maddux. That's probably a pay hike to maybe 8, maybe 10 mil.
Sounds about right.
What do you do with Profar? Represented by
Boras.
1.5 mil, utility guy, career season, but any other season, I was a 240 hitter. What are you going to pay him? Probably going to ask for 8. The kid, Jackson Merrill, what are you going to pay him?
Yeah.
800,000 to 6. That sounds reasonable. 800,000 to 8. How long before Scott Boras represents him? So, what I'm saying is the Padres have got, I counted 7 guys that they got to take care of financially. And of course, there was no Joe Musgrove. There'll be some guys leaving, Martin Perez maybe. But how are they going to go get other players? And do you keep everybody? And at what price? And how high is the payroll going to go? Lost in the conversation is the fan. They've raised the ticket prices 50% over 4 years, including next season's cost. That's an awful lot of money for John Q. Public to go see their team. So I don't know what they can do from the outside unless they're going to trade somebody to make a deal happen. You got the Hassan Kim situation, and he's represented by Boras. So, it's a lot of stuff. They got tough decisions in November, December as it relates to who stays and who goes.
Last time we did talk about Luis Arise, and I was like, yeah, you got to keep him, maybe make him your number 2 hitter. But I've been thinking about it more, and I'm wondering,
maybe there's a reason he's been traded.
Exactly. Maybe there has been a reason. How often do you trade a guy that won the batting title? And it's happened twice.
Yeah.
So that might be something the Padres can make a move on, but they got to save more than $14 million. But is there any scenario where like Bogarts could be dealt? I don't think so. They'd have to eat that whole contract.
No, none of those guys are tradable because of the length of the contract and their age and how long out that contract runs. Darvish is under contract, I think, to 40 years of age. Bogarts is under contract to 42 years of age. Nobody's going to trade for that contract unless the Padres is going to pay money. If an Eric Hosmer deal comes, you take them, we'll pay a piece of the contract. They're still on the hook for more Eric Hosmer money next year.
Well, there's only 1 year left of that, right?
Yeah, but it's 12 to 13 million every year.
It's still a lot. I agree with you. Now, the Padres have raised the prices, but they're having no trouble selling those tickets
right now. But if they start to lose, if it's no longer a pennant race team because we're stuck with all these old age contracts and the farm system isn't ready to bear the next wave, I don't know. It's still a really good franchise. I ache. I think Padre baseball right now, I just ache that they didn't get to the World Series because I thought they had this year to do it or next year. Because after that, there's going to be a dive off and you're going to be stuck with aging players on long-term contracts so you can't move.
So now you agree with Smoltz, right?
I never used the word choker. That's distasteful to me. But They
They choked.
they got beat.
Yeah.
I mean, that roster making that amount of money, those stars, 38 come from behind wins this year, all the walk-off wins, to be shut out 24 innings in a row. I can't imagine
That was just, it's still mind-blowing to think about it. But imagine if the Padres did beat the Dodgers, they would have rolled the Mets.
Sure.
You know, and
then we'd be talking about Padre Yankee baseball nonstop.
And the Padres would have had a very good chance of beating the Yankees, but I don't know what they're going to do here. I mean, but yeah, the numbers aren't adding up.
Okay, next one.
Okay, let's go here to Roy. He says, Lee, in a previous episode, I mentioned the Dodger pitching was in shambles, but our lineup was World Series worthy. That's how we made it to the World Series. We had the best record in MLB. Just saying.
No, you're true. And the bats really rallied. And it's more than just the top of the batting order. It's more than Showtime and Mookie and a healthy Fred Freeman, Max Muncy. Look at what Tommy Edman has done. You talk about, well, he just won the NLCS MVP, all these game-winning hits and home runs, and he's such a multi-position guy. He can bail you out when you have other injuries. I mean, it's pretty impressive what the Dodger bats have done, but we're in a best-of-7 game series, and that's Aaron Judge, and that's Soto, and that's Stanton, and that's all the other complementary pieces they have, led by that shortstop and led by the extra outfielder and led by the second baseman. And the Yankees have got Garrett Cole, and they have decent front-end pitching. I don't like the Yankee bullpen at all. I'm not sure it's real trustworthy, but I think it'll be a great World Series. But this Dodger team, it's pretty doggone complete.
Well, we were talking about how the bottom of that order was just a disgrace, but all of a sudden they're figuring it out. Now, by the way, I want to just say this for the record. One thing I love about the Hacksaw shtick is how you will shorten people's first names. So you're like, you said Fred Freeman, where like the whole world says Freddie Freeman. You say Fred, which I think is fantastic. And you do that with the guys that have short names. You like to lengthen them as well, just to mess with people.
From left field, John Riley with his opinions as co-host. Next topic.
Okay, let's go to Manuel. He says, show me your lightning bolt tonight.
Yeah, good game. I mean, Justin Herbert lit it up last week. Boy, I'd take some heat for what I wrote on my website. I raised the question. So the Chargers and Harbaugh and his tent revival speeches, they're 3-3. Charger fan, who the hell did you beat?
They're 3-2.
3-2. Who did you beat? You beat the Raiders. Look at where the Raiders are. You beat Carolina. Thank God there's no relegation in the NFL. They'd be out of the league. And then the third one they beat was, who was the third one?
The Raiders.
No, I said Raiders.
Raiders, Panthers, and Broncos.
Broncos in the midst of picking up the pieces, trying to fix.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you beat. You haven't played anybody yet. And well, the ones you played, you got punched in the mouth. So there's a lot of football still to be played. I'm a big Justin Herbert fan, but now they're so dinged up. They'll be asking for volunteers. Manuel, can you play wide receiver? You run a few routes for us tonight against Arizona? They are really hurt at wide receiver, and now they're down to one running back in J.K. Dobbins. So it's going to be an interesting game. And Arizona plays differently at home in Glendale than they do when they're on the road right now. So I use the word ambush in Arizona. That might happen.
Well, figure there's 2 NFL games tonight. You got to believe that
the world's going to watch Baltimore Tampa.
Exactly. They're all going to watch the other game. I mean, because East Coast fans don't care about the Cardinals and barely care about the Chargers. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of curious to see who some of these practice squad guys are going to be on the field. Maybe one of them has a night, and they can celebrate that. But Herbert has no one to throw the ball to.
Yeah, that's a big, big issue. But thank you for the show me your lightning bolt phrase.
Okay, let's keep going. We'll go to Michael. Lee, how do the recent college football firings affect the landscape, which also includes the NIL will be used?
Well, I mean, you got a few firings. You're talking about college football. Okay. I mean, the guy at East Carolina, Mike Houston, just got fired Saturday night. There've been a few, but I mean, there'll probably be some more. I think the biggest issue as it relates to the NIL is not everybody is operating by the same set of standards and circumstances. I mean, Texas and the Alabamas and those guys, their NIL checkbook is a hell of a lot bigger than the bottom feeders in the Big Ten and what's left out here of what was the Pac-12. So There's just a massive disparity, and the NCAA is trying really hard to get control of the NIL so they could actually have a blueprint that everybody must operate under. This thing, the way it's structured now, is my quarterback at Penn State can ask for a large amount of money because my quarterback at Penn State's a star, but not everybody can pay their quarterback that kind of money. It's a big, big issue. You call it Wild West. I call it chaos.
It's obviously wild what's happening with it, but let's just pretend for a minute that the SEC and the Big Ten, like we were talking about last time, they work out this super conference thing. Do you think programs like San Diego State or Oregon State, would they just die on the vine?
No, they'd seek to operate at a much different level. You have to be who you are. You can't be what you want to be.
But do you think it would ever become like a legitimate two-tiered system? Like, because right now,
nobody's going that there. Big Ten and SEC talked about that, and they said, no, we're not doing that.
But they're going to probably do that, don't you think?
You never know.
Because right now they say it's a one system, but a one-tiered system, but it's not. You know, the way they select teams for the bowl games and the college playoff, it's a rigged system. So I wonder if they should just call a spade and just, like what Brian Dutcher says, take the football things, let them go on their own, and then leave the rest of us to regional sports.
Could well be, but there'll be a lot less money for, quote, the regional conferences that are left behind because they took our top football program and took our top college football program as part of a super conference. I just, how does everybody else's intercollegiate program financially function if football is gone to a super conference? I don't understand where the revenue is going to come to fund 21 different sports at Stanford University.
Well, it seems like they either have to go to a revenue share model like the NFL or just accept reality and have a two-tiered system.
Well, I think there'll be a race to see if the NCAA can change the landscape. And if they get that changed where they have antitrust exemption and they can then put in place an NIL that is the same for everybody in Division I, this is the pot you have to operate. It's not going to be beyond that. You're not going to have the big cigar booster writing checks to the quarterback and checks to the wide receiver. Everybody will have a pot, and that's the amount. It's up to you to just decide how much you're paying Stanford's quarterback and Stanford's top wide receiver. But everybody have the same dollar amount to operate. If the NCAA gets the exemption within this calendar year and then can put together a package to control the transfer portal and the NIL, then I think you're bringing some stability to what right now is a volatile, very unstable situation.
Could the NFL ever create an equivalent of the G League?
Well, they got it right now. It's called Big Ten football, SEC football, Big 12 football, etc.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is I wonder if you need to disconnect the sport from the colleges for some of these cases, because some of these kids, they come out, they just want to get paid right away. And then why not just go right into the pros?
Yeah. No, there's not going to be a minor league that the NFL runs. That's not going to work.
Well, if they can outsource it to the NCAA, that's good for the NFL owners.
John, you're reaching too far. You're going to separate your shoulder. Next topic.
Okay, here we go. Let's talk Richard. Fans Forum. Have the Dodgers invented a new way in using the bullpen as a weapon moving forward? Is this the year Fire Roberts finally goes away? Dodger Boo looks good on you, Lee.
They look good. The Dodgers look good. And I credit their analytic people because they came up with a formula. It started in the Padres series, which was that 8-pitcher shutout bullpen game. And their metric people sat down and devised a structure of the bullpen. I barked last week that they used their closer in the 4th inning. And I said, how the hell are you doing that? And the closer started yesterday. Now, he was a little wild in the beginning, Kopech. But the Dodgers, and again, you can have in theory how we're going to match Kopech in the 4th inning against a right-handed part of the lineup. Mm-hmm. And in the 5th inning, we'll go to Vizia, the left-hander, because you're bringing up Cronenworth and all your left-handed bats. Mm-hmm. And then the 6th inning, we'll go back to a right-hander so he can face the top of that order. That works in theory, but what if your closer struggles in the 1 inning he has and he gets lit? And then you have to change everything. Then maybe that whole bullpen idea falls apart. So they've had 3 bullpen days for the Dodgers in the postseason. 2 of them worked, 1 blew up in their face. So it's all dependent on what do your closers do. But the theory was right that I'm going to bring my right-handers in to meet the Padre right-handers, and they blew them away. And then when Cronenworth and all those other guys came up batting left-handed, here came Vizia, and he blew them away. And then the right-hander, and then Banda, the left-hander, came back in. So that one opportunity, that one time, the analytics guys said, this is how we're mixing and matching, and they choked off the Padres.
Well, you figure if they obviously line it up the way they would hope it would go, and if something goes sideways, they have to adjust on the fly. But this reminds me about in the NFL, some of the teams, was it Bill Walsh that would script like the first 15
Well,
plays?
everybody does.
Yeah. So to me, that's interesting, but you can't stick to that if it's not working.
Well, down and distance changes the game situation.
Exactly.
You're not going to run certain things when you're your own 5-yard line versus if you get the ball out of the 48.
Yeah, but with the Dodgers, they're creative with the bullpen, but it's not like the Yankees have 5 or 4 starters that are going to blow you away. You get beyond Cole and Rondon, and what's left?
Luis Gil. He won 16 games.
16?
Yeah, he was a real surprise.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, after that, well, you're out there chirping about the Oakland A's and the freaking Giants all the time, John. You don't have time to pay the rest attention to the rest of the league. But their fourth starter is iffy. I think their bullpen is stretched. I just don't know that they've got legitimacy at closer. The fourth kid in the rotation just came off the disabled list, Clark Schmidt. Was a pretty good pitcher, but he hasn't pitched back to what he did last year because he had health issues. But now he's back in the rotation. But so bullpen days are great. The Dodgers have the depth in the bullpen. I mean, they've got 3 established guys that were closers at different fragments of their career. And that's a pretty good collection of 3 right-handers and 2 left-handers that can throw the hell out of the ball right now. So the Dodgers bullpen by committee or bullpen days seems to be better set than what the Yankees have.
And then the Yankees have Tim Hill, who's actually doing pretty well.
That's right.
One question, though, about the Yankees. Soto had that monster home run in the 10th inning to win it for the Yankees. A lot of Padre fans are saying, why is he suddenly good with the Yankees? He was dogging it with us with the Padres.
Well,
do you buy that?
I don't know that I would say dogging it because he did hit well here and he hit home runs, but he is surrounded by a better batting order. A lot more dangerous guys in the Yankee batting order than the San Diego batting order.
Mm-hmm.
Because Soto's last year here, there was hardly any input from Tatis, and you had Machado, who was hot and cold, and Hassan Kim had a good year a year ago. But it's not the same team.
Yeah, Cronenworth had a down year.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think there's more big bats, scary bats at Yankee Stadium for Soto to be in that mix. They're good. And the wild card for the Yankees is Stanton. I mean, that once upon a time, Giancarlo Stanton, used to be known as Mike Stanton, he was phenomenal in Miami. I thought this was the next Dave Winfield. And he got the Yankee Stadium on the mega contract. He got hurt, and he just never stayed healthy. Now, he's come off the disabled list this year, and boy, his back third of the season and his postseason, that dude is dangerous. He's hitting home runs. I think he hit 4 home runs last week.
Yeah.
And Judge hit 3, and I think Soto hit 3 or 4 last week.
Isn't Stanton, when his batting stance is a little
weird.
odd,
Yeah.
he just looks like a statue up there, and it looks like he's about to crack or break, and then suddenly, huge boom, and the ball's like a missile. So, yeah.
Good series is coming. Can't wait for Friday night. Next question.
Okay, let's go to John. He goes, if the city of Oakland were smart, they'd offer the Rays a temporary home at the Coliseum. Could you imagine the A's having to return to the city they abandoned? As for the series, watch for Juan Soto to launch some home run shots to compete with SpaceX. I don't care for either team, but Yankees in 5.
Now, I think the sucker's going 7 because you're discounting the Dodger batting order, which is pretty doggone good. The only thing about Tampa and Oakland, I mean, the Coliseum's a rat hole. Secondly, Tampa, they've got to be concerned about their TV contracts. They wouldn't be a Tampa-based fan support team if they went to Oakland for 3 years. So I don't, that's nice in theory, but it's far-fetched. It wouldn't work. And even for them to go to Orlando to play that's one of the biggest minor league stadiums anywhere. To play in Orlando at Disneyland's stadium, it's a spring training stadium. Doesn't make any sense because Tampa to Orlando is a long ways away on the map. You're going to, what's your fan support going to be like? Because you're not really Tampa's team if you're going to Orlando for 1 season or 3 seasons. But
that's only like a few hours away, isn't it?
Well, it's more than a few.
Mm-hmm.
And Orlando's up on the northeast coast. Tampa's down here in southern Florida.
No, Orlando's like in the center of the state. It's not on the coast.
Well, it's closer to the East Coast than it is the West Side.
Yeah, I always think of Orlando as sort of like right in the middle between Tampa and Cape Canaveral.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe it's kind of like the Oakland A's. You were saying how they couldn't move to Nevada because they lose their TV contract deal in Northern California. So maybe that's what, like you said, what
Could
the
well be.
Rays.
I don't think baseball would approve it. They got a real problem, and now it's St. Petersburg on the weekend saying, I don't think we can spend this money. We got to rebuild because of the hurricanes, rebuild a water system. We're going to put a roof on a baseball stadium that's going to be torn down in 3 years.
Just put some tarps over it; it'll be fine. Go to Home Depot.
No,
Or go to
can't do.
Dixieline.
And they can't play open. I said, well, just take the buttresses off, take the roof off, play open air. But they can't because there's no drainage system in that stadium.
Oh, so every time it rains,
It rains in Tampa. It does rain.
Oh God. Okay. Let's keep moving.
Thanks, John.
Okay, let's go here to Ron. I hate the Dodgers since 1957. I was born in Brooklyn in 1947. Was broken-hearted little boy when Dodgers moved. I'm an Arizona Diamondbacks fan now.
Well, I was born in Flatbush. I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up on Long Island, but I was born in Brooklyn. I still have, in 1957, at the end of the season, when the Dodgers moved, I was a young kid. My dad used to get the tabloids, the New York Daily Mirror, the New York Daily News, the New York Post. He'd bring them home. He'd ride home on the train. And I remember there was a front page. This is when they used artwork, not pictures, cartoons and artwork on the front page of one of the tabloids. There was a picture of the Dodger, the bum. What do you call it? Not logo, but the Dodger symbol was a bum, unshaven, shabby clothes with a suitcase. And they had a picture. I'll have to see if I can find it in my scrapbooks. But they have a picture of Dem Bum, the Dodger mascot, boarding a train with a suitcase with a pennant that read the word Brooklyn with a ticket in his hand to Los Angeles. That was the front page of one of the New York tabloids the day the Dodgers announced they were moving.
Well, that had to be gigantic news.
Oh, it's huge.
In New York.
And the Giants moved simultaneously from the Polo Grounds to San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, baseball fans in New York must have been devastated. But go back to the Bums. Isn't that a nickname for the Dodger fans, or was it a nickname for the Dodger players?
Both.
Both.
They were called Dem Bums.
Dem Bums. And I know the whole Dodger thing is about dodging trolley cars.
Way back in the day.
Way back in the day, yeah.
So, and they had a band. They used to march around Ebbets Fields, like a 5 or 7 member band, play music.
Like a tuba and all that.
Yeah, they called it the Symphonies. I mean, it was really cool. If you go back, that's what you should do in your spare time. Just Google Brooklyn Dodgers cartoons or something come up. And I bet you could probably find the one with Dem Bum, the mascot, with a suitcase, weeping, had tears as he was boarding the train with a ticket in his hand that said Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago, and it flashed back in my mind when he said 1957.
Those were like memes, but for the 1950s.
Yeah,
so,
a different version.
Yeah. Okay, let's go here. 4R XLA. Should the Raiders trade Max Crosby for draft picks so Telesco can start another rebuild? Max would make a great Lion.
They've said no. That question came up towards the end of this past week after the trade of Devontae Adams. But, they're going to have multiple picks now. So therefore they have an opportunity to probably get the quarterback, and they need a quarterback. That's where you start your rebuild. They also need some health, and that becomes an issue too. But Telesco's got his hands full. And, the burning question, that's not his coach. He inherited that coach. Is that the right guy? And then the third question, XLA, has to be Tom Brady's influence on Mark Davis. Will Brady carry some clout in terms of decision-making? I bet he does. That's going to be fascinating to see. But boy, they right now, they just don't have enough players, and the players they have can't play, including the quarterbacks. One who's now gone with a broken thumb, and the other one that throws interceptions.
What a mess. What is just a disaster. And Tom Telesco signed up for the wrong job.
Wow. He had to be back in it. But if they give him carte blanche, he's a smart guy. Brady's a smart guy. Maybe they'll have a meeting of the minds and find a blueprint that works, that they can fix this thing, because everything those guys have done there, going back to the Gruden days, none of it's worked.
I saw a picture today of Tom Brady with a Mark Davis haircut. It was great. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's go to Bob. Orlando makes sense, and I expect they can add more seats. Temporary stadia can be built overnight. do it and make it 15,000 or more.
Yeah, anything is possible. It's an open-air stadium, Bob. That's a good point. It's obviously a good baseball market. I mean, all the spring training markets in Florida are really special places to visit, but they're all encompassed by really small stadiums. Like I said, Port Charlotte, which is where the Rays have spring training, is well attended, but that's like a 5,800 to 6,000 stadium. You can't have that in Major League Baseball, and the unions carries clout because they get a vote as to whether we allow this to happen.
Yeah, I think he's right. They can build temporary seats. They can get creative with this. I mean, are they going to build temporary seats for the A's in Sacramento? They must, right?
Yeah, they're taking I want to say that was 8,000. I think they're going to take it to 12.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, hey, thank you for the input, Robert.
Okay, let's go to Emmanuel. He says, great day for LA yesterday. Dodgers won the pennant. The Rams beat the Raiders. Hopefully the Chargers win tonight.
We'll find out. I mean, that was a huge game for the Rams. I mean, they were 1-4, and their kids brought it on defense. I mean, I'd not seen that young guys play that way. And they're starting to get some of their injured secondary guys back, and they think they're going to get some of their offensive linemen back in the next couple of weeks. But I mean, Stafford's just taken some wicked hits, and he's getting up off the turf. But boy, he's getting blasted on some of the plays. And they think now the Rams play this Thursday night. They think Cooper Kupp is going to be activated because he went through a lot of full practice pass routes at max speed and didn't have problems with the ankle. So they'll get another week of practice in. So I think Kupp plays on Thursday, which is huge. But there is, Puka Nacua is not active yet. Tyler Higbee is not back yet. So they got to get these injured guys back. Maybe they'll be competitive the second half of the season. The TV network guys are saying they're going to make the playoffs. Well, I don't know it. At 2-4, I don't know if they got a long hill to run up.
How many years does Stafford have left?
I think he's got 2 left on the contract.
Okay.
He's a warrior. Holy cow. I mean, he's a tough hombre, and he stays in there. He took some shots yesterday in the second half. I didn't think he was getting up, and he did. And Kyron Williams, the Notre Dame running backs, he's a tough guy running the ball too. So, but their kids really stepped up to play against the Raiders. There's a reason that that quarterback had 4 turnovers. I mean, he was just a gunslinger. Minshew was just beyond himself in terms of where the hell you're throwing the ball, why you're throwing the ball, can't hold the ball, you're getting hit, you're dropping it. Wow.
Do you think the Raiders are tanking on purpose?
They should.
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders, baby.
Yeah, there you go.
Why not?
Why not?
So, yeah, I think they're going to wind up. But, Carolina's in that mix. Carolina's got just a miserable football team. So, Raiders are going to have some competition for the number 1 pick.
All right. Here we go. Let's keep moving. We'll go to Derek. Hacksaw got a haircut. Nice.
And the bowl of soup I got was really good, too.
Okay, let's keep moving. We'll go to Javi. World Series, here we come. Yankees aren't playing the Guardians this time around. Good luck.
Yeah, I'd say in the playoffs, if people come up to me, I do all this routine at a fitness center every morning, the 6 a.m. hour, and guys come up and talk sports with me all the time. And how do you think this team's going to do in the postseason? That's I say, well, postseason is a much different venue. It's really different. It's electric. It's tough. It's the focus, the intensity. And by the way, you're not playing the Pirates or the White Sox or the Marlins in the postseason, so you better have your guns loaded. You better be able to cope with it. So, yeah, I think Yankee-Dodger World Series is good. The mega TV ratings, I can't imagine what the ratings are going to be like in Japan. They just said for that final Dodger-Padre game, we talked about this last Thursday, final Dodger-Padre game when it was Ohtani, Yu Darvish, and Yamamoto, had an all-time record 12.8 million viewers. Biggest TV audience for anything in the history of television in Japan. So now you got Ohtani and Yamamoto, and you got Aaron Judge. So I think the TV ratings are going to be great here, and they're going to be phenomenal over there.
Yeah, and the Yankees have a history of having Japanese players as well.
Oh, sure.
So there's going to be a lot of Japanese fans that'll be rooting for the Yankees too. From a media perspective, a national perspective, a baseball perspective, this is a great World Series. But as a Padre fan, I'm still kind of jaded, but I'm going to try to appreciate it for what it is, and let's see what happens.
Do you think, if knowing what happened last Thursday on this podcast, when host showed up wearing a Dodger hoodie, do you think there would be a meltdown if host showed up wearing a Yankee hoodie?
That's a great question. You should try it. Bring it on. Dig it out of your closet.
It's in there.
Yeah, I've seen it before. You've worn it a few times over here. Let's go here to Jason. NFL showed they don't know what a Hall of Fame coach is by making the pioneer Don Coryell wait until years after his death to let him in.
Yeah, the limitation on how many could be admitted is a bit of an issue. And then you get into the conversation. I happen to think Schottenheimer with 200 career wins deserves accolades and deserves membership. But also in the equation is, what did they do in the playoffs? Have they won Super Bowls? Now suddenly you got different layers that qualify these guys as to whether the right guy should be voted in, or they wind up having to wait another year, or wait 5 years, or wait 18 years. In the case of Coryell's was different because he was such a creative genius and an innovator offensively. A lot of people don't know about Clark Shaughnessy. Look that up tonight. Put your beer down and just Google in his name and see what he did.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that discovered the T formation. He's the one that came up with a single wing. He's the one that eventually created what would become our pro set passing attack. And he was a great college coach and a great NFL coach. That was way back in the 30s, 40s, into the 50s. But Clark Shaughnessy deserves. Now, to me, he should be in the contributor class, not the coaching class, because he contributed in terms of creative genius.
I'm thinking of all the NFL coaches today. Who would be in the Hall of Fame? I mean, Andy Reid, obviously,
yeah.
But who else?
Boy.
Maybe Tomlin?
Well, if he continues to win and continues to get back to the Super Bowl, I guess possibly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's so far down the road.
It is. And there's so many young coaches.
And there's so much turnover on the coaching ranks.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nobody that's serving the length of time that Tomlin or Cowher or Chuck Noll did. I mean, we're talking about veteran coaches that coached a long time. When you're talking Mike Shanahan, you're talking Dan Reeves, and multiple successes at multiple teams.
Yeah, Coryell got screwed, though.
Well, it just took forever because it was a creative aspect. It was not, Don Coryell. Did he win 100 games in the NFL? No, I'm not sure he did. Maybe he was close. He never got anywhere in the playoffs. Never got to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He got to one AFC championship game with the Chargers in the Fouts era. Just one.
So, was that the Holy Roller game?
No, I don't think it was the Holy Roller game, but that was the Fouts era.
Yeah.
So tough
it was they lost in that Ice Bowl against the Bengals.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's keep moving. Joey says, Deshaun Watson's shoulders is trash. Now the Achilles, he lost his leadership qualities with the way he lived his life.
Exactly. And by the way, one of my best friends works in radio in Cleveland. And he and I text on Sundays all the time. And he just says, they're dead. He said, the Browns fans are on suicide watch. They're so angry at Jim Haslam and they're so fed up. I'll tell you how bad it was at the end of the game. And NFL players today on social media commented on it. When Watson went down, most everybody knew that it was an Achilles, the way he grabbed the back of his leg. And he wasn't hit. It was just he stepped into the pocket. When he stepped, his left leg crumbled and he was down. He grabbed his back of his ankle and everybody said Achilles. When he was put on the stretcher and the game was stopped for, 12 to 18 minutes, and they finally carted him off, the fans booed him. That was brutal. The Browns players in a postgame in the locker room were just angry as hell at the dog pound for booing the quarterback. But Watson has been such a miserable failure. And then you add on all the crap that he did personally off the field, and the women and the lawsuits. And then the ownership traded 3 number 1 picks to get this guy and gave him a mega contract that has sentenced them to salary cap hell. Like I said, if they release him, if he can't play, they take a $73 million cap hit. $73 million. That's an all-time record in the NFL because Jim Haslam, quote, gave him this contract.
Well, he's not going to play this year.
No.
And will he be ready for next year?
They think he's going to undergo something called a brace Achilles surgery, which might alleviate. Evidently, Aaron Rodgers had the same thing. That's why Rodgers is back at a much quicker pace. I'll try the same thing with Deshaun Watson, but they won't know until they actually get in there and see.
Could they hypothetically cut him loose now while he's injured, or does the union have a rule against that?
No, you can't cut that. You're on he's under contract. The whole sucker's guaranteed. If they didn't want him as a player, they'd cut him. They don't want him as a person, they could cut him. But they're taking such a massive cap hit, you can't do that.
Well, they're not going to have him anyway. So
no, but if he's on the active roster still being paid, the cap figure is lower. It's now $73 million.
Oh,
If you release the guy, you get whacked big time.
so those are perverse incentives. The way that's whole thing
It's
set
called
up.
creative bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Thank you, agents. Okay, let's do a couple more here, and then we'll go to social media.
All right, here we go. Let's go to Manny. Maybe USC isn't that good in football. They left the Pac-12 to play in the Big Ten, and they still can't go undefeated.
And maybe Mike Riley's not a good game manager.
Lincoln.
I'm sorry, Lincoln. I keep saying Mike Riley.
That's the Beavers and Chargers coach.
Yeah, Mike's one of my good friends. Lincoln Riley's not a good game manager. What he really needs is a second voice in his headset. I mean, 2 weeks ago, he had all 3 timeouts in his pocket, and he let 1:20 run off the clock as they were trying to get into field goal range, and they wound up throwing a desperation interception. And then what happened this past weekend, where they wind up losing to Maryland, and on a 4th and inches, maybe in at the Maryland 40, on a 4th and inches, he tries a 57-yard field goal rather than try to pound it, get the first down with the marks, and you could, get 10, 12 yards in closer. Tried 57-yard field goal, blocked. And then Maryland took over, and Billy Evans went right down the field and scored. And all 4 of their losses have come in the final minute. Those are 4 losses. So Lincoln Riley needs somebody in his headset who's an administrative assistant to talk to him, because he's done a really piss poor job in game management. They're 3-4. USC is 3-4.
And Maryland is like one of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's got to be tough. That's got to be really tough. Let's keep moving. Callan has a correction for us. He said Seattle has a Super Bowl and an NBA title. The Super Bowl, I keep thinking of that one against the Patriots where Russell threw the ball at the end zone.
Yeah.
And it got intercepted and ran back the whole way. Or
that was the Pete Carroll era.
Yeah.
But you got the Holmgren era too.
Okay. And then the NBA, the Sonics must have won it in the late 70s then.
It had to be. Boy, my mind's too jumbled right now, but I'm trying to remember who the head coach was at that point in time.
Bernie Bickerstaff?
Well, there've been a bunch of coaches that came through there who were fairly successful at it. When Jack Ramsey was in Portland, I'd have to go look it up. But
I remember they had a player, Slick Watts.
Oh yeah,
that played for the Sonics, and he was bald, and I thought it was so clever when
Jack Sikma was a hell of a player.
Oh, Sikma, yeah, they had a lot of really good players, but the announcer that I would listen to when the Warriors would play the Sonics was Bill King,
sure,
who was fantastic. And then whenever they had the pass, he would say outlet to Watts, and I just thought that was clever because it was like an electricity thing.
Yeah, Seattle's going to get an expansion team. I think that's almost a lock.
They deserve it.
Yeah, well, they renovated what used to be known. I think it's called the Key Arena. They renovated that, and it's become kind of a modern, state-of-the-art facility. And I think the Oakview group, which is led by a longtime NBA and NHL executive Terry Lewicki. Oakview is also one's going to rebuild a sports arena down here in downtown San Diego.
Okay.
They're helping finance it with Stan Kroenke. But anyhow, Lewicki and his people renovated the Key Arena. And when I was doing the Seahawks, I remember going down there and say, boy, this is old. This is, where the Sonics used to play. And I think there was a behind the curtain deal made that Oakview, which is a very influential group, great success track record, that Oakview is doing its renovation and they're going to get an expansion team. In fact, I think within a year, NBA will announce Seattle and Las Vegas for NBA expansion teams.
Vegas, man. Wow. Here's another quick little comment to fill in some blanks for us. This is from David. Larry O'Brien was also a politician for more than 2 decades and the U.S. Postmaster General.
Yeah, I think Larry was a Democrat in the Democratic Party. And I'd forgotten about the Postmaster General, but yeah, you kind of hit my head and there it came. Okay, let's go to social media.
Social media. There's a lot of good stuff out here too.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I know. All right, let's this is a good one here. Okay, this is from Worms Only, talking about the Chargers. He said, quote, team that looks good but is actually bad, end quote, while you're wearing a Maple Leafs jacket is insane.
Well, are you writing us as a sports critic or a fashion critic? That doesn't really matter. Hey, I wear what I wear. If it's clean in the closet, I put it on. I don't get any bonus points for fashion statements. I get bonus points for content and opinions most times. In terms of the Chargers, who have you beaten? And even Arizona's not good. So if the Bolts get their fourth win tonight, great. If they get ambushed in Arizona, I go back to my statement, who you beaten? But that's unfair to Justin Herbert because I got so many people hurt. I mean, when you're on Thursday of game week and you got 16 guys that don't practice, I get access to the injury list every day. I said, wow, how the hell are they going to show up? So we'll just see. It's a 17-week season. I've had an inordinate number of injuries. A bunch of them are nagging. I mean, there's nothing catastrophic, but Joey Bosa's not played since the second snap of opening day. And he's making all this money, and I think he's done at the end of the season. They're just not going to bring him back because he can't stay on the field, and he counts $30 million against the cap.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how they do against Arizona. Schedule gets a little bit tougher as we go forward. And in terms of my Maple Leaf look, what the hell's wrong with that? Where does it say I can't wear whatever team I want to wear? Last week was Dutch.
Like you say, you have a closet probably full of every team in every sport.
I don't own anything that doesn't have a logo on it.
Right. I mean, so I know it's just the social media comments, particularly on Instagram, are hilarious because people were criticizing what you're wearing. And if it's not the Maple Leafs, it's the Dodgers or whatever, or they're people making cracks about you getting a haircut or something,
But the bowl of soup I got was really good with the haircut.
But the sports content, there are some people that legitimately respect what you bring to the table.
There's a hell of a lot of people disrespect me too.
But that's all part of the smack talking. It's just a lot of fun.
Okay, next one.
Okay, this is a question I'm curious about your answer. And this is from Jeff Chapman. He says, what do you think about men competing in women's sports?
It's a massive issue that has to be dealt with leadership, and I don't know how they're going to deal with it. They're talking about the transgender situation.
Yeah.
Closer to home, there's a situation at San Jose State with a volleyball player. He became a she, and she is so physically dominant compared to all the other teammates on the floor. And a number of schools led by Wyoming and I think Boise in the Mountain West forfeited or canceled their conference games against San Jose State's women's volleyball team because they have a transgender star. And it's just not there. It's everything. It's a global thing. Track and field. Are you going to allow a woman to try to qualify in the Olympics from Romania who had a transgender procedure? It's a man running in a woman's body. It's a big issue. And then it filters all the way down to the high school ranks, where I'm sure in some high schools there are issues about sex change operation, and should that athlete be allowed to compete as a girl when her genes were born as a boy? I mean, it's a tough call. And the NCAA has kind of thrown their hands up in the air and say, well, leave it up to the federations. The federations will make the decision. Then now you got courts and you got family lawsuits. A very, very complicated issue.
It is. It's way beyond the scope of sports. On one level, to me, this is like a denial of reality, that men are competing in women's sports. And for some people, they're accepting that when they're pretending that this man isn't really a man anymore. But I think what we're learning with science is that it's not as binary as we think it is. And there are some people like those boxers from, where were they from? In the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And they were women, but they still had male genes in their DNA. And now we're getting above my pay grade. So you're right.
I thought you knew everything about everything.
You are the one that knows everything about everything.
In sports. But this has to do with, I'm trying to think if it's at the NCAA, there's a testing of athletes. There's a testosterone test that anybody who has gone through a sex change operation, he becomes a she, their testosterone levels have to be lower for them to compete. And this is a gray area there as to, I don't know how to explain the numbers. But if there is a man who became a woman and wants to compete at Stanford on their volleyball team, her testosterone levels have to be down here to match the T levels of women. And if they're not, she can't compete. It's a very complex.
That's getting weird. And then now you're going to have people,
formula.
Yeah. And then you're going to have people, drug doping or trying to keep the T level up or down.
Yep.
That's a mess. Okay, let's keep going here. This is from BD's saying, remember less than a month ago, you said the Dodger way is broken.
That's right. That was more than a month ago when I wrote my columns about the Dodgers' epicenter of pitching injuries. And then right after I wrote my column, the LA Times did a phenomenal investigative piece about the number of Dodger pitchers who've broken down and how many times have gone to the disabled list, etc. So the Dodger way, in terms of dealing with their pitching staff, even though they're getting ready for the World Series, has to be questioned. And they've indicated that they are going to do a top-to-bottom evaluation of how they acquire, who they acquire, how they train after they acquire them, what they demand of them. At the end of the day, are they demanding max effort on every pitch? Are they demanding they throw these brutal sweepers, which puts phenomenal stress on the forearm? Is that why they've had 8 elbow and forearm surgeries this year alone? So the Dodgers themselves admitted it's an epidemic, and they're going to take an evaluation and they're going to look at the situation. So just because the Dodgers are playing on Friday against the Yankees in the Fall Classic does not mean the Dodger way is perfect or the Dodger way has not broken, because you go talk to all their pitchers. They got so many guys. They had 38 different pitchers this season. They had 8 surgeries now. Virtually every one of their young arms has had surgery. Most of them have yet to come back. They just lost Michael Grove, who's gone for a year. He's not going to pitch at all next season. He won 11 games, 12 games for them this season. And this comes on top of what happened to Buehler, what happened to Dustin May, etc. So Dodger way has to be evaluated. But I was right when I wrote the column, because they were a disaster. Now they're still playing because their hitters have carried them. But at the end of the day, we start the World Series on Friday, and the Dodgers may have 2 bullpen games in the World Series because they don't have enough pitchers. Dodger way is not correct.
Fire Dave Roberts?
No.
Especially if they win the World Series.
Wise ass from left field.
All right, let's go here. Well, this is a comment about the Raiders. And this is from Fitness Task. He says, we need the number 1 pick in the 2025 draft. Brady is pretty much calling the shots now. Hire Bill Belichick and draft Shedeur Sanders.
Well, I think the Sanders situation kind of links if they wind up where they are. But Carolina's also going to have the top pick. So there may be some competition if indeed Shedeur Sanders winds up being the right guy. There are some good quarterbacks that will be there. As we get to the end of the regular season, we'll start to zero in on who are the top quarterbacks in the NFL draft board. But they got to solve this, because they haven't had a good quarterback since Rich Gannon. And that's a long time ago. It's in the Gruden era. So they got to fix this roster. They got holes in a ton of places, and they got injuries on top of the holes. And I don't know that this is the right head coach. So, boy, Tom Telesco's got his hands full.
Big boss man, Bill Belichick. He's not coming back, though, is he?
So he says he's going to coach next year. You know what? And he's from the Northeast Quadrant. And what might be open? Giants.
Oh, yeah.
What might be open? Jets. What might be open? Maybe Philadelphia.
Interesting.
So Belichick may have his choice if you're willing to give Belichick power and authority. I think that's one of the hidden questions. You're going to deal with him. You have to deal with his philosophy and my way or the highway. So, hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed our Monday bonus podcast.